Hello, this session is titled User Respecting Software, Free Software Development Driven by Users, and will be presented by Laurie Nagel, who is a free software and free culture activist and an FSF member since 2005 and a three-time presenter at the LibrePlanet conference. In this talk, Laurie will examine the interplay between users and developers and discuss how we can help free software proliferate by focusing on the features that users care about. So, Laurie, over to you.
So my talk is entitled User Respecting Software, Software that Respects Users, which is something that all software really should do, but oftentimes software doesn't necessarily focus on users. Lots of times, instead, it's about developers or people trying to monetize it. So how is user respecting software different from freedom respecting software? It isn't. User respecting software is freedom respecting software that is about user needs and not just developers or the need of someone to make money. It is about bottom up rather than traditional top down development. So traditionally, there have been several software development models that people have used both in proprietary and in the free software world. And back in the 90s, I don't know how many people are familiar with this or even remember this or were even alive when this was going on, but there was a cathedral model and a bazaar model. And the cathedral model was basically a monolithic model of software development inflicted upon users. So basically, a few people came up with an idea of what the software should do, what it should look like, and then users could basically decide if they wanted to use it or not. The bazaar model, similar but different, because instead of just one person or a small group saying this is what it'll be, a bunch of developers got together, made some software without much input from users. So even though it was distributed among different developers deciding what they wanted to make, users didn't really have more input. And the user respecting software model is different from either of these two models in that software is developed with user requirements and desires first, and not because of the money developers will make or anything like that. So the user respecting software model does not preclude users paying developers to write it or support it. In fact, it encourages that. And with the user respecting software model, developers have no incentive to add anti-features such as proprietary versions or unwanted advertising. Now, are those features that users actually want? I want a proprietary version that I have to pay more for, or additional advertisements or features that I just don't like. That's not really what users are looking for in software. So why is freedom respecting software playing catch up with proprietary software? Because proprietary software doesn't really have better development models than free software. Some free software projects created before their proprietary counterparts have gotten behind in terms of number of users. So initially, there may have just been a free software project, and that's pretty much all people used. And then later on, some proprietary software comes out and users might, or in some cases have decided to switch to the proprietary software because of some new feature it has that users feel is essential. And I'm going to go into specific examples later on in my talk. A lot of times when people say, why is freedom respecting software playing catch up? The answer is, well, we've got entrenched monopolies. We've got Windows that's been around forever, or oh, everybody in school or everybody in the workplace or whatever is already using this. So to try to get people to change is going to be so hard. And then like the next year, everybody gets a brand new phone or something, and you're like, or a new laptop, and you're like, I don't know, people didn't seem that resistant to changing all of that. They just changed it already. So even though it seems like a convenient excuse that software is entrenched and it's hard to get rid of what you're currently using, I think in a lot of areas, particularly in the user space, that's not really the case. It just might seem like it to certain people. If freedom respecting software is inherently better because it has the 4 freedoms, why don't all users see that? Why is proprietary software still a problem, still something that people are looking at, people are considering, and people are using? So people make excuses for proprietary software, that it meets users' current requirements. People are aware of the software, peer pressure, required to use it by schools, work, or government, and software that solves a user's problem that they didn't know they had. So basically, this is why people start using software. And if the proprietary software meets these things first, then users tend to pick it up. And then free software is playing catch up again, which is something I think we want to avoid and not have to deal with. So what do users want out of software? Well, first of all, instead of assuming what users want out of software, instead of saying, well, I think users would like this, I think users would like that, I think most people want a certain feature in the software, maybe the first step is to actually ask them what they need, what they want, what software they're currently using, why they're using it. I think a lot of free software projects just try to come up with something and then hope somebody will use it, instead of asking people what they use or what would meet their needs. Another feature that a lot of times users want in software that developers don't necessarily consider is that it works with their existing setup. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes users will buy an entirely new device to use a specific piece of software, but a lot of times, unless it's a big deal, it may be a big barrier to entry. So if it works on top of what people are already using, that's a definite plus. Ease of use. When you've been using software for a long time, you get used to its idiosyncrasies. You sometimes get used to the bugs. You get used to the features that don't work quite right. And you may not realize that it's not so easy to use. People don't usually like to read an entire manual on how to use a piece of software. features. Features is a big one. And it's why lots of times free software is playing catch up, because there's a critical feature users want. Developers don't think that people need that or don't care about it. And then whatever team implements that feature first has an advantage. So the next one is performance. Lots of times free software doesn't necessarily perform as well as proprietary software, although sometimes it's actually better in the performance area. But that's a big one, because if it's too slow, if it doesn't perform well on your system, that's important. And also fills an existing need. So, awareness of software. This is also known as marketing, and that's a term I know people hate, because marketing sounds like something that's just for business, or that is thrown in your face when you don't want to see advertisements. But basically, it's making people aware that the software exists. If you don't know that it exists, then how are you going to use it? And these people are just as critical as the people writing the code, doing the documentation, gathering user requirements, translators. People promoting the software are just as important, because if nobody hears about it, nobody reads about it, if they don't know it exists, then how are you going to have users? So how do users find out about the software? Well, one way is from other people who use the software, internet search, and in cases where people are already using gnu+linux, you can often find it in the existing distributions. So
Can I ask you a question?
yes.
You're just talking about awareness of the software and letting people know that these free softwares exist. And yeah, and we have good free software, but I wanted to know what you think about the incentives people want, like in order to replace their proprietary garbage with freedom software, and how we can better, even after letting people know about good free alternatives to proprietary software, how do we actually appeal those softwares to them? How do we appeal to their motivations to join our philosophy or try out these new softwares?
Well, sometimes people are already looking for an alternative because they're not happy with the proprietary software. Maybe it doesn't have the features they want. Maybe it costs too much money. Maybe it's software as a service and they're getting takedowns on what they want to post. So there could be a lot of reasons that people, maybe it doesn't run on whatever operating system they want to run. So there's lots of reasons that people are already looking for alternatives to proprietary software. So stepping in those cases right away, you have a reason to step in and mention free software. And then just sometimes in casual conversation, people will want to know, like, oh, you made this presentation. Well, what did you use? And right away you can say, well, I used this free software program to make my presentation, or I prepared this PDF using free software, or this music track I composed, I did that entirely with these free software tools. And actually, for communication software, something like GNU Jammy, you can just say, well, I'd love to try video chatting with you. Why don't you try out this program I found called GNU Jammy, and let's have a chat. So if it's a network effect kind of thing, it's in some sense easy to get friends and family and people to try it out, because the fact that you're using it is already motivation for them to use it. So, or check out this fun new game I'm playing. So already they're interested in trying it. You just have to bring up the fact that you're using it and the fact that it's a great piece of software. So that's definitely one way.
Yeah, that is really good advice. Yeah.
And also,
That it just naturally looks more appealing when you're already using those softwares, and it gives them a go on, like, if somebody else can use the softwares, maybe there is something to it, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to motivate people to check it out. And then when you're putting up an internet site for your project, or just putting up a site or some kind of directory, or writing an article about free software, you think about, well, what would users be searching for in terms of what search terms would they use? And then the last one is, do users even realize if it is a problem that software could help solve? So sometimes users are looking to solve a problem and they may not necessarily think right away, oh, software is the solution, but in some cases it is the solution, or it could be a solution. So they already have some issue that could be solved with free software that's already existing. That's another way to bring the software to people's attention.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I know I discussed this before, the network effect. Geez, I can't believe how long this is taking me. So more or less important depending on the type of software. Software that is about connecting people has more network effect than solo programs. For example, video chat, everyone all using the same formats. I'm messing with old PDFs made in a certain ancient proprietary Office suite that don't quite come out in LibreOffice. So that's a frustration I have. Telling people about the software in your network to use it too can be a negative thing with proprietary software, particularly multi-user programs that are hard to avoid. The usage of existing power structures to spread software use. So I know this stuff has been covered in a lot of other talks here at LibrePlanet this year, so I'll just go over the school usage, the workplace usage, government usage, and I think those topics were covered better elsewhere. So solving a user's problem, software you didn't know you needed. So you don't need software, so why even have it? The world ran just fine before computers. Well, that's the thing. Sometimes people haven't used software to solve a problem, and then later they realize, oh, having software would solve that problem. And that's kind of why people got cell phones, even though they're terrible from a freedom-respecting software perspective. Proprietary companies are always coming up with this stuff and getting a first-to-market advantage. So we need to try to stay ahead of the curve. It is better to guess what users will want in the future and create it rather than trying to replace proprietary software later. Software can't solve everything, and this isn't just about making software, but being up to date with user trends and demanded features. So I go over a few examples here of in the case of IRC versus Discord, I was like, should I even mention the names of some of these proprietary programs? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I have to make an example out of this piece of software. IRC came first. It's better because it's freedom respecting. Unfortunately, even some free software projects started using Discord because why? Because it saves the chat logs for when you are offline, and that for a lot of users is an important feature because they don't want to run their computers 24/7 just to log chat. Discord got used for open source projects, not to be confused with Discourse, which is forum software that uses JavaScript and is freedom respecting software. Users and system admins don't fix this problem because why bother? And this reminds me of the old BitKeeper problem, which was eventually replaced with Git because people don't really like to use proprietary software for free software projects, but sometimes features are too compelling and people who aren't necessarily into the ideological part of freedom respecting software, you get tempted and give in to things like that. Here's another example, Minetest versus Minecraft, and I actually found out that Minetest came first or around the same time as Minecraft, so it wasn't like there was a big gap between when the projects were started. I'm not really sure why Minecraft surpassed Minetest in terms of users and mods. Possibly has to do with marketing rather than any inherent betterness. I point out that Minecraft was written in Java, which is an easier language to work in than C++. Minetest has trouble with getting mods checked out, so they fit into the game and are relatively bug-free. Last time I played it, well, I did play it at LibrePlanet, but in terms of a newer version of it, the Minetest game itself still had some trouble connecting over a local area network and getting disconnects. Although Mineclone worked fine. I didn't have any problem with that. That is, two people on the same network using it. So this is my last example, proprietary social media versus Mastodon. Proprietary social media came first, but there's a lot of networks people don't even remember. There's new kinds of social media all the time, including cell phone only social media. Federated social media sounds like a better way, but in practice, users care about the groups feature. Recent political unrest in the US and some people scrambling for alternatives to current social media, but free software was unable to take advantage of some of that because we didn't add the groups feature. Another project added the feature, but people weren't happy about how it was implemented. So I'll just kind of go on from there. So how can we apply user-respecting software models to freedom-respecting software projects? So ask for user input before even starting. Users should directly fund development. Developers should anticipate user needs in advance so we don't have to keep playing the catch-up game. Marketing and collecting user requirements is just as important as coders and other kinds of contributors. And if there's a bunch of developers and they made a project and it's just not meeting user needs, we should just hard fork it and not worry about, oh, existing developers don't like that, because it's really about what users want and not just, oh, what developers feel like making. So did I have any more slides here? Nope, that's it. I don't know, there's probably a lot of questions on things, or if somebody wanted me to go into detail about more stuff, I just want to leave plenty of time for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie, for the talk, and it was really good for you to share all that knowledge with us. There are several questions. Can you talk a little bit about, like we are moving into like a completely digital society, and everything in the future is going to be online, and most of that software is proprietary, as most of us know. And so how can we encourage governments to support free software and include free software in like their own implementations of societal structures, and to be more transparent with the population? Can you speak about that?
Well, I can give my own personal opinion on that, and that is, I personally am not a big fan of government because, and this isn't really just because of software, but because I see so many things where the government's spending money not on infrastructure, but on things that are actively detrimental for citizens.
And you're talking about a group feature in a piece of software, and that that we that yeah, and that free software did not include that feature, and so it did not make much progress.
Yeah, the groups feature in social media is very essential, and I know Mastodon is kind of like Twitter, so it doesn't really have that feature, but for a lot of users, what they want to do is kind of create a smaller group of people who have similar interests and just chat with each other on certain topics, and maybe everybody on the platform doesn't necessarily want to read all of that, or maybe even other groups of friends that you belong to. They might follow you, but they might not. Say you're in a gardening group, maybe they don't care about your hundreds of little snippets of conversation on that, but maybe they're interested in your free software development. But if they just follow you or something, then they're like reading all of that stuff, which people may not want to do. So that's why the groups feature is kind of essential, because you have limited amounts of time, so you want to spend your time on things that you're interested in and things that are important to you. So groups really allows people to do that. And not having that feature, is a deal breaker for a lot of people.
And related to that question, do you think most free and open source developers, spend most of their time developing because there is some software needs that they have, and so they mostly develop for themselves, and what do you think can incentivize developers to focus more on the users of the software that can benefit from those softwares? And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think there's a couple reasons people start developing freedom respecting software. The main one is developing software that they personally want to use. And then the other one is sometimes people develop software to learn something or to try out a new library or language, maybe in hopes of getting employment in it, or maybe just because it looks like an interesting and fun thing to work on. So I think between scratching their own itches and just kind of playing around to try to learn something, there's a lot of developer created software that does that. But even though that might be fine for developers, it doesn't necessarily meet user needs. So I've seen even card games where somebody did as like maybe a school project, and it's like it's almost done. You know, if somebody put a little more polish into this, this would be like, you know, a really good card game. And you're like, oh, but they didn't quite get the user interface right or the algorithm right, and then they just left it. And there's like probably, I don't know, I wouldn't surprise me if there's tens of thousands of projects like this. That if just a little more user input and they could be really popular projects.
How do you think we encourage organizations, schools, and colleges more? You talked about it a little bit in your talk, but can you elaborate on, you know, getting like teachers of schools or universities and to pay more attention to this free software just for the students, and why do you think there is such negligence even in academic situations when they should be the most progressive people on these things?
Well, part of it is, as in other talks, people were saying, well, teachers, administrators don't necessarily have a lot of time to just devote to researching software. So instead of expecting them to go out and research, oh, what's the best free software to use, you have to come to them and ask them, what are your requirements? What would work best for your classroom in terms of what you need? Because sometimes I think developers make educational software and then try to foist it on the classroom rather than looking at, okay, what's the curriculum? What do teachers want to teach? What kinds of technology do they want to use? What's their budget? What features do they need? Instead of looking at what needs do schools have, I think there's too much, well, we've made this and now let's have schools use it. Instead of figuring out what are the schools' needs, what's important, privacy, you know, that's important. How do we make sure it meets all our requirements?
I agree with that, and that we should take more responsibility ourselves instead of assuming that the teachers would just spend all their time researching free software in order to benefit their students. And stemming from that is, you know, software freedom advocacy. And where do you think we are falling short in advocating the vision of free software? I know you have been advocating for free software for a long time, and what do you think we should focus more of our attention on as free software advocates?
I definitely think we should be focusing on users' needs and users' wants, essentially. So we should both ask them.
Sorry, and do you also think that the aesthetics and beauty of the software are also very important as opposed to just the functionality and what the software does?
Yes, I do. I think that's actually I think it's an important thing, how it looks, how it feels, you know. It's not just, oh, I don't think it's just a behind the scenes technically works well type of thing. I mean, I believe that's an important factor in why people choose to use software.
And I also definitely think that most the people who that are kind of on the boundary, who don't really care if their software is free or not, do you think they are maybe missing, they don't understand some of the consequences of moving into the future where our society is mostly digital, and they don't understand the consequences of, you know, just running any kind of software on their devices, and not really taking the time to actually research if the software is actually free or not.
I think actually quite a few people are concerned about these issues. I know when I mentioned the social media thing, I mean, people were concerned, oh, platforms are booting people about things I really don't think they should be booting people for. Or just in general, people I know who played MMORPGs were upset because, oh, they took it offline and now I can't play it anymore. So it's not that people aren't concerned with these issues, because they are concerned with these issues that affect their freedom. But the problem is people know about the problems, but they don't see that freedom respecting software is the solution. So people know there's a problem, but they don't understand what the solution is. They try to find some other proprietary option maybe, or just any old software, whether it's free or not. They don't. So even though people know these things are problems, they don't jump to the conclusion, oh, the solution is freedom respecting software, and how can we develop a freedom respecting software alternative? The idea doesn't necessarily come up in people's minds that that's how you solve this problem, because people know this stuff is a problem and people are angry about these things. But the thing is, they don't see the solution because they're not aware that that's the solution.
And are there any good ways to encourage users to become aware of this and be more vocal? And also for ourselves, like we think that we are kind of the odd people on the side, and nobody really cares. And how do you think free software advocates should be encouraged to be more vocal and not to be shamed by their opinions about these things? And because it is also it is sometimes a difficult topic, because it is not always very simple. It is sometimes complicated. And how do you think we should encourage advocates to be more vocal about their opinions, or if not even vocal, how to be okay with their opinions and not focus too much on what others opinions are about them, negative if they are.
Yeah, I know, because I know I've even posted about freedom respecting software, and sometimes, it comes off like, oh, you're trolling now about something. So there's a few things we can do, and that is sometimes talk to people one-on-one rather than in a big group can work. Talk to people who already have something in common with you, so you're already having conversations with them about other things, and just bring up freedom respecting software as something you use, something you believe in, something that when they're looking for a program to use, this is what I use. Or so
What are the yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, what are the areas in which free software advocacy has been, or free software adoption has been rampant, or most obviously reflected, which areas, sectors, or industries, if you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I know a lot of system administrators and people who are very technical have adopted a lot of free software. I mean, gnu+linux dominates on the server end. So even if a lot of those people aren't ideological, a lot of them have just adopted the free software just because it's practical. And once people know about code and stuff like that, in some sense, it's easier to talk to them about technical topics. And then places where it's not as common is like the cell phones, things where people
It's getting better, right? So,
yeah.
with Android and all the other operating systems now available on mobile, and new devices coming out, as you might know, in the US, Librem 5, and a Chinese manufacturer known as Pine 64 that delivers free software phones all around the world.
Yeah,
It's getting better, right?
that's good.
Do you have any general advice for people that you may that you have gathered throughout your life, and you've first joined FSF in 2005, and you might have gained some insights that new people might not have, and or might take them a long time to figure out for themselves? And do you have any general insights or advice for free software and free software advocacy in general, or anything other related to the topic?
Well, I think this is very helpful. Don't just be interested in free software and nothing else. It helps if you are interested in other things besides just software, because software is applied to every area of our lives pretty much, especially now. So it's a good idea to get involved in other things. And the other side of that would be figure out what you're good at and what you enjoy. Don't just think, oh, this person likes to code, so I should enjoy coding, or this person likes to talk to governments about software, so I should be doing that. Everybody has their own talents and their own gifts, and you should use the ones that you have and the things that you're strong in and that you enjoy, and don't try to be Richard Stallman or some other prominent free software advocate. Be yourself.
Right. And not just advocate just for the sake of it. And if you're really passionate, maybe then, and yes, I also think it's very important to just to obviously follow your passion, and whatever stems from that. If free software advocacy is helpful, and maybe if you are already in the technical fields, free software also allows a lot of customizability and improving your workflows, and not worry about if your files and data on your devices are safe and all that. And it's even if you want to advocate for free software, you should first follow your passion and make sure that you're just not advocating just for the sake of it, and do what you love first, right?
Yes, I think that's very important.
Okay. And we're running out of time. It was great to talk to you, Laurie, and hope to see you in the future.
Yeah, and I'll also be in IRC in case people have any more questions. They can chat with me.
Yes.
I'll be in IRC. So.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for the talk.